Yeah, it's fine.
Tammy, have you seen
Do you see my next statement?
What?
No, it's Marissa.
Are we good, Shay?
Yeah.
Good, so. Alright, so we are going to restart this now that you all have your packets. So inside of these packets are your rubrics for and example scenarios for selection committee. You can look at them now if you want, you can wait until later. We're really not going to cover those fully quite yet. Maybe if we have time towards the end of our meeting, we'll start covering those. But we want this portion to be extraordinarily also question-driven, because we do have Joey and Corinne here that have gone through the entire year of state office, and then obviously the 5 of us have gone through the election process before. So we want to make sure that you leave here having the questions answered that you want answered. So is there anything like right off the bat that you guys just really want to know? All right.
It's stressful.
Joey, what's your gamer tag?
Is it
What?
What's your gamer tag?
What's my gamer tag? It's terrible. It's dumb, but that's not related to. I'll tell you later.
All right. So yeah, I think that like we weren't kidding in the other room when we all said that this is a stressful experience. Like that's just the reality of it. I mean, if you're running for the right reasons, then this is something that really means a lot to you, and it should be something that is stressful for you because this is a big deal.
If you aren't nervous about it, if you aren't stressed about it, then
If you aren't nervous, you don't care.
yeah. Yeah,
Pretty good too.
Mental speech. Yeah, but
It's going to be a hard process.
yeah.
Selection committee and state convention itself, I probably cried at least twice a day throughout all state convention. Everyone handles it differently,
Yes.
but I was not handling it very well. You can ask the others. They had people come check on me every week or every day throughout the week. It was just, it's really hard. So throughout this process, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, how you handle stressful situations, how you're going to carry yourself throughout all this, and ultimately how you're going to perform under a lot of stress, especially through selection committee, back-to-back, different scenarios. So be prepared to be stressed all the time, and make sure your friends know as well.
We don't want to like scare you or anything. Which I remember leaving like this meeting, I was like, oh my god, I'm like, it's gonna like kill me. Like I'm not gonna be able to do
Our
the
parents kind of
process.
scared you guys last year.
Your parents
Yeah.
were intense.
They were
But-
very thorough.
But at the end of the day, like you do learn so much about yourself, even if you like don't make it past selection committee. If you make it to the top 10, you don't become a state officer. Like we already talked about, going through selection committee or even being on stage, you accomplish so much from doing that. And the process of doing that, and your life is in 2 different things and all that kind of stuff. But once you get through it, it's like it's awesome. So
And like it's not just all like you're gonna be stressed, but and like you know depending on how you handle this kind of stuff. I know I like once I was ready and prepared for selection committee, like I kind of had fun with it, just because you know like I prepared so much, and I enjoyed giving speeches, I enjoyed doing interviews. So like you got in there, and you realize you know like you love doing this. That's why you're running for this position. So yeah, you're gonna be stressed, but don't forget to have fun at the same time.
I can tell you that all of us handled the stress of selection committee and state convention all vastly, vastly different. We all took a little bit different approaches into how we dealt with that, how we prepared. So maybe if we each want to just go through kind of like how we how we organized ourselves to prepare for selection committee and how we did that. Just one of you want to start?
I can. So, first selection committee, you get handed this packet full of wonderful things that you're supposed to study up on, and really it's taking that time out of whatever moment you had. I know for me, it was when I got out of class, we had time between this class and this class, we got out early, like it was me pulling out my, what I called my selection committee folder, which had everything that I had printed out, everything that they gave me here today, and I would read through it, or I would go through questions and things that potentially could be test questions, and I started evaluating, like, if I was writing a speech, you know, try to think on those ideas and bounce off of other people that were there. So for me, it was just, and any time that I had time, I would try to dedicate it to working on improving something. I know when I had some of my classes, I had a big gap, so once I had my speeches wrote actually for selection committee, I would go into an empty classroom and talk to myself, which people thought I was probably crazy, but that is something that helped me. And I also, every morning we would drive to Lakeland and I'd carpool with my brother Alex, and every single morning and afternoon when we drove there, I would run through my Why I Want to Be a State Officer speech in my keynote over and over and over to the point that Alex was absolutely sick of it. But that was something that helped me in preparing, and he was able to give me some feedback and things, and definitely using other people that you kind of have whether that be your advisor or somebody else's advisor or section advisor, and bouncing off of ideas and getting feedback from there is what kind of helps me get prepared and get ready to go through it. But I think the biggest piece of advice is definitely go in with the right mindset. So we're all going towards the same goal, however 5 people will get it. So yes, put your heart and soul into it, but also recognize that only 10 get through selection committee, and you've kind of got to be ready, but you've got to recognize that there is a plan, whichever way it is, and you've got to go in being positive and excited and ready and prepared and enjoy it to a point. Like Miriam said, you don't want to necessarily, you do want to stress out to the point that you care, but not to the point that you're breaking down and, you know, wanting to, I don't know, just not enjoy it or not do it anymore, you know?
And like my approach to how I prepared for selection committee was kind of similar to Taylor. Like I would designate times in my day that I am going to practice. I usually try to practice my speeches at least once every day for my family in my living room. By the time I was going to selection committee, I'm pretty sure that my mom had my speeches memorized also. They knew them just as well. I cannot stress how important it is to really, really prepare for selection committee. Like if you want to ensure that you're going to be successful in selection committee, you need to be prepared. That means studying, that means making sure that your speeches are ready to go, making sure that you've done some practice interviews and that you're ready for whatever might come your way in selection committee. Even things that you think could be the impromptu scenario, going through some of those things. So like for me last year, since facilitation is the new room this year, sometimes the impromptu scenario used to be facilitation. I didn't know if that was going to be what the impromptu scenario was my year of selection committee, but I knew that it was a possibility, and I also knew that it was one of my weak areas. So I went to a chapter that's neighboring my school, and I presented a workshop to their green hands just to get back in that mode of facilitation. So just be really prepared, but also you can't stress out and prepare so much to this point that you've completely stopped enjoying the other things in your life, because even if you are successful or aren't successful, you don't want to look back on this last semester of high school. For me it was, or for Shaylee maybe it was her last semester of her freshman year of college, and think like, wow, I just really did not enjoy that time, because graduation is an exciting time in your life. There's a lot of really exciting things going on. So don't stress out and prepare to the point that you're not doing anything that's fun to you anymore. Take time to go bowling with your friends, go out and have dinner with your family somewhere. Take time to do those things, because that really will help you in the end, in a way, be more prepared, because you will be more mentally stable and you'll be more in the right mindset to do well.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, because one of the things that I did regret, which I tried to work on stuff like that, is definitely don't let it consume your life, because at some point it is going to be your life. You're going to think that all you're ever going to think about is your speeches. All you're ever going to think about is you going through selection committee, because obviously that's a stressful time. But also let yourself, when your friends ask you, hey, let's go out, let's do something, do it. Like, give yourself that time. And usually what I would do is, like, there was a few times that my friends would be like, oh, let's go out. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't finished my speech yet. I got to finish my speech. And I wouldn't let myself go out until my speech was done. But once it was, then I could go out and I could, like, de-stress about it and things like that. So still allow yourself to go out and do things, and don't be just living in a hole by yourself, working on selection committee 24/7. Also, another thing, if we're talking about preparing a lot, was like with my advisor. I had a lot of time in the ag room, and that became my home mostly. But also, I was in a creative writing class, and in this creative writing class, my last semester, we were forced to write in a journal for like the first 30 minutes of class, and I thought it was dumb because I don't like writing in journals. But then after, when select committee time came, it actually really helped me. Every day I would write down, okay, this is what I'm working on, this is how I feel, this is how I'm doing, this is what I gotta do, and then it actually really helped me out, and so I'm honestly really glad that I was forced to do it. So that's advice I give you guys, is like, just get it out, get your thoughts out there, get your feelings out there, don't keep them inside. If you want to talk to somebody about it, if you want to tell a paper about it, if you want to talk to yourself about it, whatever, it's gonna help you. Obviously everyone does it differently, so that's important.
I'd say for sure, I can echo definitely being prepared. I was only able to have fun in selection committee because I knew that I knew my speeches. I knew that I was ready for anything that they would throw at me. And I practiced my speeches so much, I was kind of tired of them. Like, I still enjoyed giving them, but I practiced them so much, I knew them inside and out. Like, I could wake up in the middle of the night and just, like, give you my speech because I knew it so well. And a lot of people talked about how when they drove to selection committee, like they took a parent, they took a friend. I actually drove myself because like that was how I processed things the best. Because like I was by myself, I could really focus on, you know, I'm gonna run through the speech one more time, I'm gonna run through my other speech one more time. But then along with that, don't practice your speeches too much. Like once you say it perfectly on your selection committee, don't feel like you have to say it again. Because like then I'd end up psyching myself out. So definitely be prepared, but don't psych yourself out. Because like you'll know when you're comfortable and you'll know when you need to, you know, just kind of relax, do stress. My prom was actually the night before selection committee. And you know, I still went to prom, I still had fun at prom. So that is, you know, really important to make sure you are still doing those other fun things about high school or, you know, if you're in college with that. But then I studied a lot of Quizlets for like the tests because I knew that was something that like I can get these tests perfect if I practice enough. Whereas, you know, speeches might be kind of subjective, but the tests I focused a lot of time studying for those. So the AGAD report, the Illinois FFA history, National FFA history. So like I was getting my nails done before prom and I was studying Quizlets at the same time. So, you know, being sure to use your time very wisely. Sometimes you might be multitasking. If you get your math homework done, you know, work on your speech. Just, you know, use that time very wisely.
Like even Miriam and I, a little different this year since we had Build instead of FBYC. But last year, Farm Bureau Youth Conference fell the week like before selection committee. So selection committee was that Saturday of FBYC. So of course like tensions are high and things are going on. And it was actually me, Miriam, and Kristen Sibley, who was in section 13, and we were rooming together. And it was a moment that we were all in that right headspace, but we recognized that yes, to a point we're competition, but really we weren't because we were teammates first. And that's the biggest piece of advice I think, is recognizing that we're teammates no matter if you're section or a section president or just a section officer. We're all just a big team, an FFA family here. And we actually ran through speeches with one another, giving each other critiques and feedback, even though we were, in a sense, you know, what people would say would be competing. We shared Quizlets with one another and studied tests. Like, we stayed up way too early, but it was something that helped, and it was having other people that were going through the same thing to relate and to, you know, bounce ideas and get real feedback from.
And that kind of reminds me and Tammy actually were talking at lunch yesterday about, you know, when it comes to selection committee and running for state office, it's not so much like, yes, you're competing for the same thing as the other people, but you're not really competing against them. You're competing against yourself. The entire goal of selection committee and state office is that you do your personal best. That sounds kind of cheesy, but that's really what it is you're competing against yourself.
More or less what she's trying to also say is worry about what you need to do.
Yep.
One of the big problems that we had my years, we had 11 that were running. We only had 11 that went to selection committee. So everyone was so focused my section president year on who was going to be that one. So a lot of my section president teammates, and I, for that matter, was like, okay, I'm so worried about, I can't be that one person to mess up. You just got to think about what you need to do that day. Don't think about what, you know, don't think about what Jonathan has to do that day, or don't think about what Natalie has to do. Think about what I need to do to make myself the highest quality candidate, prepare yourself to do the best of your ability. And what I did to prepare is I really leaned on my parents. My parents were a very valuable asset to me because my parents could cut the BS, and they knew if I was being fluffy and when I was not being fluffy, because your parents know you more than anybody, I have to say. So your parents know you when you're being genuine, and what you're saying is you believe it in your heart. And I also relied on prayer, so I prayed a lot. And spiritually, it just gave me at ease to know that even though if I'm not successful, you know, you can move on to the next step. So make sure, don't go in with that expectation that you're going to make it to, because I can't assert enough how important it is to, you know, you want this, you want this, you want this, and, you know, unfortunately it might not happen. And you got to be prepared for the next step. You got to be prepared. You got to, don't go in 100% saying this is going to happen, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And just worry about what you need to do that day.
And there's so many other things, like if you don't make state office, like there's so many other things to look forward to in your life. Like don't psych yourself up for state office so much that nothing else looks exciting.
One of the candidates that ran for state office didn't get it. Fortunately, she became assistant to Sonny Perdue, the USDA, working right next to Sonny Perdue as part of his new opioid crisis initiative or whatever, working side by side with Sonny Perdue. You know, we met him, but Claire got to work for him.
Yeah.
And
he was her boss.
He was her boss, and she worked with him a lot of times. She saw him, and he knew her by name. How cool is that? So it's definitely not the end all be all of what you can accomplish.
Should we okay to go forward? Do you have something to add from your experience?
Yeah, I think when I ran, I had a very different team dynamic. We didn't have as many, like, we didn't go to DC together as a team. We didn't really connect that much at the beginning. Like, it was more towards the end. And I know when I ran through selection committee, but also especially once the top 10 was announced, it was a lot more cutthroat.
Yeah.
It was not as of a, we're a team. It was more of, I'm better than you. I'm going to get it. You're not going to get it.
And that's advice. Make it like what Miriam said. You know, don't think of it as competition. Think about what the best you need to do and support each other, because that creates a very hostile environment.
Last
And
year we were really good at that.
Craig can speak about what
Because,
had happened.
It was hostile, like, it wasn't like super hostile when it was happening, but afterwards we had candidates who didn't get it come into the office and complaining that it was rigged, that people, my teammates didn't deserve to be elected, and we had people saying that, like, I didn't deserve state office, that they deserve state office over me. And it hurt all of our feelings, because it was like, we worked our butts off just as much as everyone else, and then our values taken away. And so from that experience, and I know from being a state officer and seeing like your section president team, you guys were a lot closer knit right from the get-go. And I know from teams on out, I think it's going to be that way. And I'm a competitive person. I like to win and I like to do well. But in this scenario, don't put it into that. I know how easy it is to do it, but it can end friendships afterwards because of how people can treat each other during this.
So let's move on to touching a little bit more in depth on the mentor process, because you will be the primary one that's working with the mentor aside from your parents that day at state convention. So Taylor, do you want to dive a little bit more into that mentor process and what that actually is like from our experience?
Yeah, so once the top 10 are announced, the top 10 will receive an email that has a list of those that have agreed to be part of the mentor process, so pass it officer. So mine last year was actually Kirsten Edgar, and they are there to really help you through the entire process, and like mentioned before, they become your parents' mentor as well. And I know one of the really great reasons they are there, and like the asset they are, is all that stress you're going through. You can relate to other candidates, but also they understand what you're going through, so they can kind of help you figure out the best way to kind of relieve that stress and kind of work towards it, as well as I know I asked Kirsten, it is always different for whoever your mentor is and kind of what you're comfortable with or what you want help with, but I had asked for some opinions where, like for my speeches, like did you like this one for a reporter, or did you like this one, or vice versa, and she was able to like, yeah, you know, I like this one better, or flip these around, as well as when it came to my posters, I was like, okay, I have like 3 designs, what's your favorite one, what do you think? Kind of getting feedback that way, because it was almost like an outside eye and somebody else who was looking in on it and who has watched the process for years upon years, as well as went through it themselves. So your mentor is truly there for you. So always, you know, be honest with them and allow them to give you advice, but also make sure that if maybe you don't agree with their advice, like it's ultimately your choice, and it's ultimately up to you what choice you want for your speech or for your poster. So make sure you, again, you know, you be you, and you also take their advice though, and yeah, use them, I guess.
Yeah, Corinne was actually my mentor for a convention, and when you receive the mentor list, it's not just like a list of names, it's actually like a PowerPoint slide that each mentor writes some things about themselves, or like what their approach was. So as I clicked, it's really important to read that and know, like, it can help you select the right mentor for you. So when I was reading Corinne's, for example, her approach to it and what she wrote as what she brings in the value of a mentor was something that I felt aligned a lot with mine. So it's more about selecting a mentor, maybe not that you personally know already, but pick one that really aligns with your values, even if you don't know their name. And I cannot express how valuable the mentor process is. Corinne can tell you, there's a couple times that I was just having a really rough day with my speeches. I was feeling really down on myself, really stressed out. I might call her and sit on my front porch and talk to her for an hour. And because she was maybe the only person in my life that had really been through exactly what I was going through and understood. Because sometimes, honestly, you'll talk to your friends about it, you'll talk to your parents about it, but unless that they've been through what you're actually going through, you might feel as if you're coming up short with somebody that actually understands what your mindset is. And so that to me was like a huge asset that Corinne brought, was just saying, here's how I dealt with this. Like, she knew exactly what I was feeling. And then as convention came, she was at convention, we practiced speeches the night before, she was there that morning. Just someone that has done this before and knows exactly what you're feeling, and that's why it's really important to go through and find a mentor on that list that really aligns with your values, aligns with your personality and your approach to the election process.
Like, considering, because some of them will be like, yeah, like, I'll tell it to you straight exactly how your speech was, and some of them are like, you know what, sometimes I like to go, you know, a little bit of a different approach where I kind of go around it, but we'll ultimately get there. So it is really just looking at that PowerPoint and taking into consideration how you work yourself, how you deal with stress, how you think you guys can work together and ultimately, you know, get that best result.
Yeah, and personality is definitely important. Like, I ended up with Susie Thompson as my mentor, and I found out, like, I didn't know her super well beforehand, but, you know, I got to know her more. Like, she really did have a very similar personality to me, and so she could tell me, like, if I, you know, throw her this speech idea, she could tell me if I could pull it off or not, you know, because, like, you know, there's some things that my personality I just can't pull off, you know, I can, like, sing and dance on stage, that would not go over well, and, like, Susie would understand that. And so it is definitely important.
You going to?
No, I wasn't going to. That was just an example. No,
Yodel.
that never went through my no. Yeah, definitely just having someone that understands your personality, understands how you work, understands, like, if you're stressed, if you just need a hug at state convention, if you want to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning and go to
Yeah,
Starbucks,
right.
you know, that's what your mentor's for.
If you do get to that step, make sure you are very serious about thinking of which one is going to match with your personality. Don't pick one that was just because they were recent, because you knew them, because they were an officer and you were a member. My mentor, and actually the people that I had prepped, were all past state officers. It had been quite a few years, and I didn't know them. I only knew them as ACT teachers, or I knew them as someone in the industry, but what they had talked about was they were very brutally honest, and they were going to tell you how it was, and that was what I needed. And that's what I felt like was going to help me the best. So I prepped them, and Miss Barr was phenomenal. I threw out a lot of speeches. I threw out a lot of posters because she wasn't happy with them. And it was frustrating at times, but I knew in the end it was because that was exactly what I needed, and obviously it helped me. So make sure that the person that you pick or the people that you prep are the ones that you think will help you the most. They match up with your personality, and they're something that you need as you go through this.
Also take into consideration the people that you already have in your life. So for me, the ones that said they were brutally honest, that wasn't necessarily what I needed, because I already have people in my life. Like, I knew my mom was going to read my speech and she was going to tell me exactly what she thought about it. So I already had someone brutally honest in my life. So what I was looking for in a mentor is somebody that really understood my approach to it, and somebody that really was there to support me emotionally and understood that I was going through. So for me, that was what I valued in a mentor, whereas Shaylee valued something a little bit differently. So it's all just knowing yourself and knowing what you need in finding that mentor.
And like being running for state office and having a mentor, and then being a mentor, you need to express your wants right off the get-go. Because I know, like, when we like emailed each other and like was calling each other on the phone, like, I was bouncing off ideas of you of like, here's things that might have helped me when I was running. Would have this been okay with you? Like, I know, like, once a week I send her like a motivational quote, just as something like just to get her ready before elections. And then the day of elections, I found quotes that like connected to all of her speeches somehow, and then I sent them all to her that morning of, here's the last one, today's the day, like, go big or go home type of thing. And so if you make it through selection committee, kind of sit down and kind of figure out what you want and be able to verbally tell that person that. Or if they give you an idea to do something, because I know for me, I'd be open if you want me to be hard, like, you want me to critique you hard on your speeches, and if that's what you want, I can do that. It's just, I don't know. Because I know people took it very differently, where like Mindy talked about, like, some people do very basic things, and you talk to each other for the minimum 3 times, and then you saw them for the first time the day of elections. So we need to start the initiation, but also you need to be upfront.
It's going to be whatever you make the mentor process into.
And one of the biggest jobs is them sitting with their parents at state convention.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a good thing for, at least for my parents, I think for all of our parents, is very helpful. Like, my dad likes to say that he was calm, cool, and collected, but we all know that that is not how he was. So Kirsten was right there, helping him through the whole thing. So make sure, like, if there is an opportunity, also introduce your parents to your mentor. Maybe ask they can mention before Thursday or before then, you know.
Yep. So Corinne actually came the night before elections and met with me and my family and my advisor and a couple of my really close friends and my runner. And we kind of just talked through elections so that she could get to know them a little bit better before elections. And I can tell you right now, if my parents could give a Yelp review for the mentor process during elections, they would give it a 10 out of 5 stars. Because they constantly tell me just like, boy, am I glad that Corinne was there, because honestly, I forgot everything you told me about the election process. So it's just really important to just make sure that you're utilizing that mentor in all aspects of your election, not just your speeches, not just your emotional, but also connecting them to those people that are there at convention to support you.
And also, it doesn't really help to have, like, I figured I was going to meet your parents, but I really appreciate meeting your advisor, like, in that scenario, meeting your runner, because I know, like, after you left to, like, lights out or whatever, I sat and I talked with your advisor and the people in your school because they were curious. They didn't know how to ask some of these questions to you. And so I was mentored to your parents, to your friends, to your runner. I know, like, Michael or your boyfriend, like, he had questions where it was, like, a very important time to have, because I mean, my dad during this during this meeting, he was very open to asking questions. But I know some parents don't want to embarrass their kids, or they can't think of the questions right off the bat. If your parents want your mentor's phone number, ask them, and then they can text them and bother them for questions, because it's really not that's the job we took.
And just throughout this whole process, like, do not be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions to us, ask questions to your mentors, ask questions about the process. If there's anything that you don't understand, ask the question, because it is sometimes can be a confusing and extremely overwhelming process. So just don't be afraid to ask those questions. On that note, are there any questions right now?
Nice segue.
That was a good segue.
Really?
Alright, well, we each wrote down just like one piece of general advice that we picked out that was really important to us. And some of them we've already talked about a little bit, so we'll hit on them briefly. But just like if there was one thing
What
that
else
stood
do
out.
you have down on there? Or is this kind of the end?
It's kind of the end, yeah.
Okay, I think you need to go over what the selection committee
Yeah.
day
Okay.
looks like.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So,
Which I think it's kind of like.
It may be in there, but I think we need to talk about it.
Different rooms, like
Yes.
last year we gave
Different
a
rooms.
description of each room, like explain what those do.
But, and then
Yes.
how they move through it,
Yeah.
and the
so
different
maybe
flights
you
and.
want to intro it, and then we can just take the room that we're like running at.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so like selection committee is about like a 2-hour, 3-hour window. You know, on that Saturday, so depending on how many people we have run, there'll be a certain number of heats. So that's just the people that you'd be working with for the group activity.
And those are just drawn at random.
Yes.
And you're
Put
it's
your
not like
names in a hat and we draw
Can't you
them out.
say preference, like, if
You
have
can,
prom
if
that
you know
night,
you've got
yeah.
something going that
Yes.
night, or
yes.
or maybe you need to go later because you had prom the night before, you know.
But yeah,
Let
and,
us know that.
yes. And the people in your heat, it's not like you're competing against them. Like it's just a way to break it up, to break out the timing. So yeah, so there'll be 7 different rooms, and there's 2 tests. There's an Ag Ed test and an FFA knowledge test, so that's where your Quizlets will come in handy. Study the Illinois Ag Ed report that was on the PowerPoint that was sent out in that email.
It just
And
is
then-
out on the website too.
Yeah, so it's on the website.
And there should
study
be
that.
printed copies. Last year we got our printed copies at our district proficiencies. So by that point you don't have one, ask your district FCAE director and they can help you out.
So yeah, study that, like study the numbers, study the people, like study everything in that book because you never know what's going to be on the test. And then, you know, all the history, there's a lot of resources with FFA history, Parley Pro things, like that will be on the test. Then we'll have a writing activity that could be anything from writing a thank you letter to a sponsor or really anything like that. All the things in selection committee are things that you would be doing as a major, and so that's why, you know, it's really important that you do take these things seriously, be prepared for them. You'll have your prepared speech. That could be a banquet keynote. It could be a speech for a hearing at the State Board of Education, anything like that. And you'll get the topic for that about 3 weeks before, I think, State Awards Day.
2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
You'll get the topic for that, and you can start writing that speech, start memorizing that speech. There's the general interview. Really just, you know, you want to be genuine in that. You want to talk about yourself. I know Gage was in that room last year, and I kind of cried a little bit in that interview. Got a little emotional, but yeah, don't be afraid to really be yourself. Really be genuine, be authentic, put your heart out there. Then you have your impromptu scenario.
Which is?
They could be literally anything. That would definitely stress me out the most because I'm a very prepared person. But you know, just go in there with the right mindset. You've done a lot of things, you know, as you're just as officers that will help you prepare for that.
You want to tell what the impromptu scenario was last year?
Yes, last year the impromptu scenario was a radio interview, so it was like you were at the state fair at the Boneyard and you're walking over to go interview with someone, talking about different ag topics. They gave us a paper, so like before you go into the room, you'll have about 3 to 4 minutes.
I thought it was